If you're the Predators and you're Barry Trotz, and this keeps continuing it on towards the first of the year, towards the Olympic break, towards the trade deadline, by the time the trade deadline goes on, do you blow this up? Do you trade Stamkos to a contender? Do you do the same thing with Shea and Marchessault and O'Reilly and kind of try to rebuild or retool or do anything like this in Nashville? Welcome to another episode of the Checking From Behind podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. I'm your host, Zach, and with no Preston still out due to personal reasons, I brought on Brian Anderson of the Hockey 411 podcast. Brian, thank you for joining me for today's episode.
I'm happy to return the favor. Thanks for the invite, and let's get the show going here. I'm really excited to talk some puck here.
Kind of what I want you to go through, explain to the audience what you're about over there with the Hockey podcast and how you got into it, how you got into covering hockey, etc., stuff like that. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I appreciate the invite, appreciate the time. For those that don't know me, my name is Brian Anderson. I run the Hockey 411 podcast. You can find us pretty much on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, any social media at the Hockey 411, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just a little bit about myself. Grew up playing hockey all throughout my years. Played in college, started podcasting back at school, and recorded the team, did a lot there. So I've been playing my entire life, been networking around the league, and the podcast just keeps growing. So I love watching it, love playing it, and a little bit of a hockey junkie. People are like, would you rather be watching a hockey night in Canada Saturday night or going out? And picking hockey night in Canada any day of the week. So really excited to be here.
Being able to sit down and watch a 10-game slate from 7 p.m. Eastern until midnight, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Where else would you rather be than on your couch or in your bed or wherever you are watching hockey? Or if you go to a game, I don't know what people do. It's great. It's great. We have a lot to talk about in today's episode. We have Adrian Kempe cashing in on an $85 total million extension, which locks himself as the Kings' new offensive centerpiece. But not only with the contracts, you also have a brawl that happened after the final buzzer between the Rangers and the Red Wings because Mason Appleton of the Red Wings, he fired a puck into an empty net right after that buzzer. And then we end up in Nashville where should they end up blowing it up for the second straight season after this quote-unquote retool from Barry Trotz, they're not off to a great start. Should they go out and trade O'Reilly, Stamkos, Marchessault, and the rest of the crew? And in St. Louis, Doug Armstrong, he is fielding calls on everyone, including his captain, Brady Stren, and star winger, Jordan Kyrou. We'll get into that. And then to end things off, we have our weekly segment on the Thursday episodes called Thursday Therapy. This week, it is the Toronto Maple Leafs edition because they are struggling. So let's hop into the Adrian Kempe contract. He signed an 8x $10.625 million contract extension. We all knew an extension was coming from the Kings. They would not let Kempe go no matter what. They were not going to let him walk. And we've seen a bunch of these players like the AAVs with Kyle Connor. He took 12. And when Eichel took whatever his was, I think it was 15 or something like that off the top of my head. I could be completely wrong. But when you saw those guys back in September and October take those deals, we kind of figured Adrian Kempe was going to be in the range of $10 to $12 million max. He came in at the 10.625, and at 29 years old, it's not going to kick in until he's 30 years old. So the contract is up when he's 38 years old. And if you're the Kings, this is exactly what you wanted. He's not super, super expensive, especially with the cap rising exponentially. And obviously, some people may look at this as an overpay because he only gives you 70 plus points a season, which is great, especially for an offensive centerpiece. But you also have to look at the defensive side of the game where he is productive defensively too. So you're not only paying him to be the offensive force and leader and offensive driver of the LA Kings, but also you pay him to play a two-way game too. And honestly, I think this is a very value deal for both Kempe and the LA Kings.
I think you hit it on the head. LA needed to keep this guy. You're letting Kopitar is retiring at the end of the year. That's a huge loss. So you have Byfield shuffling up, and then what are you going to do about 2C? You can shuffle Danault up, and then what do you do about 3C? So there's going to be holes in this lineup. So to secure a top line winger that would have hit the market at a pretty nice clip for what he's doing in this league right now, you had to do it. It extends the LA window to keep in the playoffs and make longer playoff runs. I don't know if I have this team as a cup contender right now, but they are going to make some noise, hopefully, in playoffs. And look, when we talk about Kempe, right, a lot of it is shots on goal, going hard in the net, and he's got a lot of speed too. These are things that we don't necessarily see from every single player around the league. And when you can find that, and you find a guy who, when I watch him, he's literally putting on at least 4 or 5 shots every single game when you watch him. You can go look at the numbers. It felt like an automatic, especially in that Oilers series last year. He was driving them in that hard. He finds that greasy area, and he puts pucks on net, like I said. And, it also helps when you have a good transition game and good speed coming through the neutral zone on zone entries. So, look, this is a home run deal for the LA Kings. I loved it from the beginning. It was more of a matter of time. I know just in general, you have to keep guys like this. These type of players don't really come around a lot.
No, they don't. And into some details with the contract, he has a full no movement clause until 29-30. And then after that, from 2030 to 2034, it becomes a 15-team no trade list. He also is now the second highest paid Los Angeles King, only behind Drew Doughty, who's making $11 million as well. So you're paying him. He is the franchise cornerstone and the franchise player for the LA Kings. And like you brought up, Quinton Byfield too, who I can touch on real quick, where sure, he plays center, and a lot of franchise center pieces are those top-end centers. But Byfield, I don't feel like has reached up to his full potential, whereas Kempe, he drives the play. Breakout is great. Transition game, being able to make plays in the offensive zone and defensive zone, being able to be on the right spots at the right time. And like you brought up, a lot of times in the playoffs too, Kempe is one of the only players, at least as of recently, that shows up night in and night out. We, of course, have seen flashes of Kevin Fiala or Byfield or even Philip Deneau, who had a huge goal after McDavid willed the Oilers back in Game 1 last season. He ends up coming back and scoring right away to put it away. But then the rest of the series, he wasn't really a factor. But Kempe, he's there every single night, not one game, and then the next game he's non-existent. And if he's not producing offensively, you're able to see him on the ice, whether he's producing scoring chances, whether he's forechecking really hard, back checking, he's giving it all. And the LA Kings, I think they got themselves a stud. He scored 40 goals 3 seasons ago, back-to-back 70-plus point seasons. So Kempe is a good measuring tool of what a lot of these guys that are very good top 6 guys, but are right below the category of elite, what money they're going to get between that $10 to $11 million range. We're going to see it with Alex Tuch. We're going to see it with some other players, where now that Adrian Kempe is locked at $10.6 million, could we see these players ask for $11 million? Could we see them ask for 10.5? You're also going to have teams kind of reluctant, like let's bring up Alex Tuch. I follow the Sabres and everything, Sabres fans, so I kind of do a lot of comparisons with the Sabres. But Alex Tuch is a very good comparison to Adrian Kempe. The Sabres are not going to probably go past $11 million with Alex Tuch because of this Kempe deal. So the Kempe deal, like the Kaprizov deal, like the other deals that happened earlier in the offseason, it's going to have a ripple effect on the league. And overall, if the Kings can build around Kempe and retool, because they're honestly in a very weak Pacific Division, and they're benefiting from the Oilers struggling. They're benefiting from maybe the Ducks start regressing a little bit. They're kind of around 500 over the last 10 games. Vegas has gotten better, though, and the Kraken, they're pretenders. So the Kings can still slide in their third spot and be in the playoffs in the Pacific Division. And I didn't like the additions that Holland made over the offseason, getting Brian Dumoulin, getting Cody Ceci. So I think this Kempe deal is a step in the right direction. I want to see them now put the finishing touches on an LA Kings team that really missed its window opportunity to go out and try to compete for a Stanley Cup over the last 4 seasons.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more here. Look, when you talk about Kempe, like I said, it's shots on goal, good speed, and he's aggressive. He's a good F1 on your forecheck, someone who's going to go in and fish out that puck. When you talk about F2, F3, you want guys that read and react. Like Kempe can be that guy to really dig a puck out of a corner and win a battle there. And like I said, you don't let guys like this walk. You just can't, because it'll set your franchise back years, because you need someone to be riding shotgun with Byfield for many years to come. You got to keep the support going, especially on the wings. And I know you brought up Alex Tuck, and I know if you're a Sabres fan or if you're Sabres front office, you kind of cringe at the number because you don't want to be paying Alex Tuck that. Look, I think Kempe is better than Alex Tuck. I think he's in a different tier. Alex Tuck is having a fine year, but if I'm picking one of them, I'm picking Kempe in this case. But yeah, he's resetting this market for like these 1B wingers / centers. And, he should be on the upper echelon of that 1B tier.
Couldn't agree with you more there. Let's move on over to the red. Jesus Christ, I can't talk. The Rangers against the Red Wings. That post-game brawl, Mason Appleton goes ahead, shoots the puck in the empty net after the final buzzer, and everything looked okay at first, panning over to the teams kind of gathering out, ready to head to the tunnel, and then it comes 40-year-old Jonathan Quick to just start everything. And then he didn't like it, apparently, and he goes after Mason Appleton. Then obviously, if your goaltender's drawing back at somebody, the rest of the Rangers team is going to step in and have their back. And then it turns into an all-out brawl, and that was the epitome of what hockey used to be. You don't really have much of this anymore, if anything at all. But the fact that both teams were in their Centennial jerseys, and this happened on that night, and the photos that came of it, it was just an absolute masterpiece. It was great.
I've been telling a lot of buddies of mine, you can hang that picture in the Louvre. You know exactly what picture I'm talking about. You mentioned the Centennial jerseys. This was old-time hockey. This was a 2-1 game, if my memory serves me correct. Tight checking, not a lot of space out there. Look, the Rangers are struggling at home. They have one win on their home ice at MSG, the world's most famous arena. And, I don't blame Jonathan Quick for taking exception to that. He played pretty solid that game. Quick for his age has been fantastic in New York, and it's kind of crazy to think about when you come full circle how Quick denied the Rangers a cup in, I believe it was 2014, and now he's on them, and he's playing well. He's doing great as a backup. His pads are fantastic with these Centennial jerseys. It was all-time jersey matchup, like I said. But again, it gets the boys fired up. When you do something like that for Mason Appleton, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's trying to get under some skins and just really kind of mess with some heads there. And you know what? Jonathan Quick took exception to it, and it's old school hockey. I mean, somehow, some way, the Rangers are always in this. The last time we saw this, I'm pretty sure, was a year or two ago, the line brawl against the Devils. Like, it always feels like there's just the Thunderdome here at MSG over the last couple seasons.
I like that point that you brought up with they only have that one win at home. So if you're Quick, maybe it didn't bother him that much, but he's like, gotta get the boys fucking fired up. Like, let's do something here. Maybe that could be a reason why I wouldn't think not, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, I was not able to watch that live. I had other things to do that night. But like you said, that picture, you can hang it up, fucking blow it up, put that in MSG, and just have that hanging from the rafters. That was great. I enjoyed that. The Nashville Predators, they are off to another horrendous start. 20 games into the season for them, 6-10-4, 16 points, on pace for another 75-point season, 400 points percentage. This is the second straight season that they've gotten off to the start. We all know they went all in. Barry Trotz did last offseason, got Stamkos. He ended up getting O'Reilly, got Marchessault, got Brady Shea, and he got the older guys in free agency, and everybody crowned them as the off-season winners because Stamkos coming off a 40-goal season. Marchessault, same thing. Shea was one of the best defensemen in that draft class. You have O'Reilly, who's still one of the better two-way centers in the league, although he is kind of struggling now. He can still win you faceoffs and beat you with his IQ. And all of a sudden, it's blowing up in their face. So I want to get your take on this. If you're the Predators and you're Barry Trotz, and this keeps continuing it on towards the first of the year, towards the Olympic break, towards the trade deadline, by the time the trade deadline goes on, do you blow this up? Do you trade Stamkos to a contender? Do you do the same thing with Shea and Marchessault and O'Reilly and kind of try to rebuild or retool or do anything like this in Nashville?
It's hard. Barry Trotz has kind of boxed himself into a corner here. He brought back Bruno after a tough season. So when I talk about Bruno, it's Andrew Burnett, head coach. And you have really put yourself in a bad spot because you signed Steven Stamkos to a big term deal. You signed Jonathan Marchessault to a long-term deal. You sign Brady Shea to a long-term deal, all with some form of no movement clause, no trade clause. There's something in there that's going to impede him. So I would like to see him kind of retool, retinker, because they do have prospects. Like Brady Martin, they drafted this past season, is going to be good. This kid's going to be a nice addition. Leroux, also another name I really like on this in this system here. That said, but when you go and watch them day in, day out, they're okay on offense. They're okay on defense. The neutral zone's kind of a mess. I think the perfect game to go through is the second game over in Europe, over in Sweden. It just kind of felt like they were there. They were just kind of hanging out. Like they just kind of they can push the pace when they want to, but all of a sudden then it's in the back of your net. I mean, there were risks when you signed older guys to long-term deals. I mean, we're getting Sabres vocal Ryan O'Reilly right now. I mean, I have not seen Ryan O'Reilly this critical and just this unfiltered since probably his Buffalo days. And I remember listening and watching to that and being like, wow, Ryan O'Reilly is really saying some wild stuff here. Like we're starting to get to that point of level. Like Barry Trotz has really boxed himself into a corner here with these contracts. And look, would I like him to make some moves? Would I think it makes sense to move a Stamkos? Yeah, but how can you? I mean, you're in a no-tax state. Everyone keeps talking about it around the league about how, Florida has the no tax, so everybody wants to go there. I mean, how many times did you hear Leafs media and Leafs fans talk about how they were getting gypped on taxes? Tennessee's a no-tax state. Same thing with Dallas, same thing with Florida. Like I said, he's not really going to be – I personally wouldn't want to be jumping to leave that for financial reasons. But when you talk about hockey, yeah, probably it's time to go. But at the same time, who's going to be able to absorb that contract? I heard Chicago's name floated around there as like from other podcasters talking about like possible destinations. The Hawks are having a good year, but I don't know. I don't really know why you would take a guy like that and take that risk and take that contract on. It's just Barry Trotz should tinker with this and try and blow it up, but I don't think he can at this point.
It will be tough to blow it up. I agree with you there. Steven Stamkos, if you trade him, it's gonna have to be at 50% retained. There's not gonna be a team that is gonna take on $6 to $8 million of Steven Stamkos playing hockey like this. Or if that's the case, they'll be like, yeah, we'll take on all $8 million, but here's a 5th round pick for him at that point, right? Your most realistic bet is to trade Ryan O'Reilly, who's making $4.5 million right now. You can even 50% retain that, and now it's only down to $2.25 million. A very affordable contract to trade for this season, and then all of next season, and then it's off the books for both teams. You brought up the younger guys like Leroux. They have Fedor Svechnikov, and Matthew Wood as well. Matthew Wood's having a phenomenal season. They have young talent, but they're just so young that they're not producing on a night-to-night basis. They're still learning. You have Luke Evangelista, who has been around since he's 18, 19 years old with the Predators. None of these guys, though, I mean, maybe Brady Martin and Matthew Wood you can build around on the offense. But when you have Erik Haula, who's making $3.1 million, which I think is a little bit much, even though he could be a trade candidate this trade deadline, as he's a UFA, he could be a rental to a team that needs a 3rd line or 4th line center. Michael Bunting, who's making $4.5. Again, if they want to blow it up, like you brought up, maybe trading Stamkos isn't the best option right now. Maybe it is trading an Erik Haula or Michael Bunting or Ryan O'Reilly. Obviously, you're not trading Philip Forsberg, and I don't necessarily see them being able to trade Jonathan Marchessault yet. I think if they 50% retain now, it is a very affordable contract, but the only issue is that it's for the next 3 seasons after this season through the 28-29 season. And you go over to the blue line, obviously you're not trading Roman Josi, who has dealt with injury issues the last couple of seasons. Brady Shea, that contract's immovable right now at $7 million with how bad he's been. I like Nicholas Hague. Nick Perbix is a solid bottom 6 guy, but right now he's playing top 4 minutes. He's playing on that second pair. So the team as a whole, it's not completely well-rounded. If you want to blow it up, you're going to have to trade the guys that I just mentioned. You're not going to be able to trade off Stamkos. And if the Predators want to start stringing some wins together, Stamkos is going to have to find his game. Ryan O'Reilly is going to be better. Marchessault is going to be better. These guys that you are paying are going to have to be better. Obviously, Philip Forsberg has done his job so far. He is not the issue. So Barry Trotz, like you said, he backed himself into a corner. He's going to have to figure this out ASAP.
Yeah, I mean, I fully expect an Eric Hall, Michael Bunting to be moved here eventually at the deadline based off of UFA status, based off contract status. But when we talk about blowing it up, we're talking about big institutional changes, big changes to your core, guys you want to have stick around long term. You just can't do that here, especially with these no move clauses, no trade clauses that they've done. I do think Andrew Burnett's time will be up at the end of the year. I liked Bruno in Florida. I thought he got the short end of the stick and how it ended there. Obviously, if you're a Panthers fan, Paul Maurice has worked out extremely well, but overall, it just hasn't worked in Nashville. You can't be this 50-50 in the offensive zone, this 50-50 in the defensive zone. Frankly, the Preds are not really that much fun of a watch. It's kind of very bleh kind of hockey right now. So Barry Trotz has got his work cut out for him here. He's got some serious wood to chop.
All right, I'm going to ask you this because this name has been floating around over the last couple of weeks. You see Saros, who, as of right now, he is 30 years old. He just signed the extension a couple of off seasons ago. He's making $7.74 million. The defense in front of him is making his stats not look good. UC Saros, I think, is still a very capable goaltender with a capable defense in front of him. Do you look at a team like Edmonton or maybe even Carolina or one of these contenders that you can trade off UC Saros to one of them, try to get something back, and try to quote-unquote fleece in a deal because you know a team is desperate for a borderline elite goaltender like Saros where he can maybe revive his career, or with this cap hit, maybe it could be immovable, or do you just not trade him at all no matter what?
The thing with Juice is that his underlying statistics are tough this year. Hasn't been a good ride for UC Saros so far. Like you said, I think the defensive zone really needs to be cleaned up. I mean, Bruno likes to run this below the zone like we're going to play high. I like to call it a West Coast offense, considering bringing my NFL terms here, considering how when you talk about West Coast offenses, it's all about offense stretching the field. Bruno likes to do that. Sometimes their goalies can be left out to dry a little bit. UC Saros' underlying analytics have been tough, but as I like to say on my show, goalies are voodoo. You get them year in and year out. You have no idea what's going to happen. These guys change season over season. I know you brought up Carolina. I know you brought up Edmonton. There's going to have to be salary going back. Look, if you're Edmonton, I know they're playing right now as we record this here on the 19th. They've got some serious goaltending issues. But, if you also talk about Edmonton, right? When you watch their games, and I saw this tweet, and I really, really got me thinking about how they're designed to play right now. In every frame that you see with Edmonton, you see like one or two guys, maybe three. It's never a full five. So I know we talk about goaltending being an issue, but they also need to play a little bit stronger defense in their own zone. They need to be a little stronger in the neutral zone. It's this run and gun. Again, another team that's about run and gun. Believe me, I'm never going to complain about that as a fan. But if you're trying to win hockey games long term, you got to fix it up here. I can't put any more pressure on Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard to pick it up. And look, if you're Edmonton, I'm definitely trying to make a phone call. Then again, UC Saros has got a full new move, so he's going to have to agree to that as well. I'd love to see Juice in Edmonton. I think it's a great fit. Do I realistically think it's going to happen? Probably not, because Edmonton's going to have to find a way to ship some salary out there too, and they've got a lot of money tied up with a lot of long-term contracts there. Someone would have to bite the bullet. As with regards to Carolina, Freddie Anderson's always a question mark, especially in the playoffs. As much as I love the guy and how long he's been around the league and how good he's been, there's some goals, especially in that Edmonton game. It was just really questionable decisions. Peter Kochkov, I feel like I've always wanted more out of him, and he's just kind of been there. So you could see it. I don't know if I see Carolina jumping to go get a goaltender. I think they need a little bit more help on their blue line and maybe their bottom six. Now, granted, their blue line's pretty banged up right now, but it's something that I would, if you're Carolina GM, and I'm blanking on his name, and I apologize, I believe it's Eric Tulsky, I think I'm looking to beef up my blue line a little bit better than my goaltending right now. Not to shoot down both teams, but again, salary's got to be going the other way. That's the biggest thing right here, and that is going to hold Juice in Nashville because of his contract.
You brought up a good point with goaltending. Sometimes goaltenders have ridiculously good years, right? We saw it last year with Darcy Kempe, who every other season, it seems like he's been really good and then really bad and really good and really good. And last season, he was a Vezina candidate, and he obviously had a really, really good season. If it wasn't for Connor Hellebuck having an historic year, Darcy Kemper might have won the Vezina trophy. But besides him, though, not to single him out, but goaltending, a lot of it is relying on other factors, right? It's relying on bounces in the game, right? It relies on your defense in front of you. It relies on other factors, right? Especially like coming to the bounces part where a puck hits off a shin pad, your own player's shin pad, when you would have easily saved it, and now it's headed the other direction. It hits the corner of the post and goes in. Like, who blames a goaltender for allowing a goal like that? Like, deflections, there's so many variables and stuff like that. And like you brought up, Edmonton's defense is putrid. You look at the goal saves above expected for Stuart Skinner, it's right around 0. So he's making the saves that he needs to be making. Although watching him against the Sabres, he didn't look so good, but like you brought up, Darnell Nurse has been fucking putrid in Edmonton. Ekholm hasn't been as good defensively. Bouchard, we all know defensively, he's not great, although analytically, Bouchard has been much better than offensively, which is a kind of surprised me when I looked at that a few days ago. But Saros, he does have a no movement clause, like you brought up. If he wants to get traded, he will have a say, and he will have a say which team. So if he says, I want to go to 2 teams, you have to make your work. Otherwise, he's not leaving Nashville. So we'll see what the Predators do here. They're in a very tricky situation, and they're going to be in a probably limbo until they figure what they want to do and have a full plan on how to move forward.
We talk about Barry Trotz being boxed in. Again, another reason, like if UC Saros comes to them and I want to be traded to 3 teams, we saw with Claude Giroux a couple of seasons ago on a trade. He forced his way to Florida. He got a shorter end of the deal, essentially, for the returning team in Philadelphia. This could if he wants to be moved, he can force his way where he wants to. And they gave him that contract. He's earned that right to do that. So that's something to keep in mind, too. I mean, again, Barry Trotz has really got his hands tied here.
We also saw with Patrick Kane in 2022, he forced his way to New York, 4th-round pick. Everybody's like, why did you only want a 4th-round pick? It came out 2 days later that he forced his hand to New York, and at the trade deadline, you had no other choice, and obviously Chris Drury knew that. So, obviously, a lot of other factors going into UC Saros. Does he want to be on a contender? Well, if he wants to be on a contender, okay, that's great. You can ask for a trade or give him a list of teams that you want to be traded to. Or maybe he's okay with losing because he's raising his family in Nashville. He has a house that he wants to be in. He wants to be in Nashville for the rest of his life. That's also a factor too. Is it weather? There's so many variables in the whether a player wants to waive his no movement clause, whether he wants to go to a certain city or stay in a certain city. So a lot of variables here too. With UC Saros, I'm not saying that they should go out and, we have to trade UC Saros. Go to him. Will you waive your no movement clause? No, it's not necessarily an issue to have him on your team. It's just a situation of he's getting to the age of 30. He's been on the team for practically his entire career. It's okay to ask a guy when you're going into a rebuild that's a veteran, that's a leader, that is a really good player. Like, hey, do you want to be on a contender? We don't really plan on trying to quote unquote win anytime soon. We're going to rebuild. We're going to try to retool. Like, do you want to be moved? Like, it's a lot of times that happens too. So this episode is brought to you by DraftKings Sportsbook. Hockey's back in the season. DraftKings is an official sports betting partner of the NHL. I use DraftKings to bet on any NHL game and player props, and you should too. From anytime goal scorer to picking an underdog, trying to win big, DraftKings has it all. And here's the best part. New customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get paid out $300 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and use code THPN. That's code THPN to turn $5 into $200 in bonus bets if your bet hits. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That is 467-3669. In Connecticut, help is available for gambling problems. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, fees may apply in Illinois. Must be the age of 21 years or older. Age and eligibility vary by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 7 days after assurance. See sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos for details. NFL Sunday ticket offer for new subscribers only. Auto renews until canceled. Digital games and commercial use excluded. Restrictions apply. Additional terms at youtube.com/go/NFL Sunday ticket/terms. Limited time offer.
All right, quick timeout before we get back to the action. This episode is brought to you by W Energy. Listen, hockey's fast, and whether you're breaking down plays, yelling shoot from the couch, or just getting in a workout, you've got to stay sharp. That's where W comes in. Clean energy with zero sugar, no crash, no artificial flavors or dyes. Just 150 milligrams of caffeine per serving, about 2 cups of coffee's worth to keep you locked in and ready to go. Personally, I use W before the gym, on the ice, and even when prepping content for the pod. If you need that extra spark, whether you're grinding through work, lifting, or lacing up the skates, W's got you covered. Head over to W.GG and use code CFB Pod for 10% off your order. That's W.GG, code CFB Pod for 10% off your order. Fuel up, stay locked in, and let's get back to the episode. How about some other trade news coming out of St. Louis, where they're fielding calls for everybody, including Jordan Kyrou, including Braden Shen. Kyrou was scratched earlier this month in a game against coming back to Buffalo, and then the following game, he ends up scoring a goal. And Armstrong, he knows the start that the Blues are on, which isn't pretty right now. They sit 8th in the wildcard standings, 6-9-5, 17 points. They're third to last in the Western Conference. They're not off to a great start. And I want to compare these two situations real quick before we really get into the St. Louis Blues. Do you remember a couple of seasons ago when they made the playoffs after that Vegas incident where Barry Trotz and the front office, they shut down going to whatever, the Sphere for a Travis Scott concert, whatever. They rattled off a 17-game point streak, and then that kind of gave the Predators false hope. Well, last season, the St. Louis Blues went on a similar type point streak, got into the playoffs, took the Winnipeg Jets to overtime in Game 7. They were 4 seconds away, actually, from moving on and upsetting the Winnipeg Jets. And the Blues did something right here, and Armstrong was good on it. Not pulling a Barry Trotz and going all in, be like, oh, this team can be really good. Let's go out and get every single big fish that we possibly can, spend to the cap, and understand. And okay, I admire Barry Trotz for going out swinging, but when you have a point streak that long, like Nashville did, like St. Louis did, that is unsustainable throughout the long term. That's good in the short term to be able to get in the playoffs and make moves and win hockey games and get as many points as possible when you were 8 points back of a playoff spot at one point. But you also have to look at the big picture, right? Armstrong did a really good job of not going out and making a $14 million offer to Mitch Marner, making $12 million offer to the Ehlers. He didn't do that. He kind of stuck with the same guys, made the little signings that he would have, whether he made the playoffs or missed it, whatever. But now they're here struggling. I want to get your take on trading Jordan Kyrou, Shen, kind of changing stuff up here in St. Louis, and if change is needed in St. Louis.
I think change is possible for St. Louis. I think it's more patience at this point. I mean, we've seen – how many times have we seen the St. Louis Blues year over year? Come American Thanksgiving, come Christmas, they're a totally different team. They turn it up in the second half somehow, some way. I mean, the whole reason why they won the Cup back in, I think it was 2019, if my memory serves correct, they went on a crazy good run at the end. And look, when you have Jim Montgomery at the helm, like he's a very good, capable coach. That also said, I didn't mind their game last night against the Leafs. Look, they lost in overtime to Willie Nylander doing whatever that was on a backhand toey and then doing one more deke instead of going left to right, going right back to the near side post. I got to talk. You got to shout that out because that might have been the move of the year. The confidence to pull that off by William Nylander, just unbelievable. As a little side note, I enjoyed the Blues game last night. I thought they played well. I thought they played pretty tight there. But Binnington, for the most part, was strong. And you need that more from Binnington. Joel Hofer's had his spots this year. You know, he's had some real good stand-up moves. And Binnington, he's been one of the worst statistical goalies, especially underlines this season. I mean, that game where they got routed at Washington was really tough watch. But, you know, when you have younger guys like a Dvorsky, a Snuggerud, like, it's going to take some acclimation. Like, Jimmy Snuggerud is a really, really good player. He had a lot of fun at Minnesota. Watch his game when you can. Like, this kid's going to be a stud in St. Louis. I mean, look, when you talk about Braden Shen, we heard his name last year a lot, right, at the deadline, and he didn't get moved because they were like, you know what, we're gonna stick with the group. We're gonna keep going here. So again, another name that I've heard a lot of. Could he get moved? Yeah, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if he stays. Jordan Kyrou is the interesting piece, right? Because he's got a nice little contract here. the top 6 winger. He's someone I want on my team. He's got that goal scoring touch that you can't necessarily find in certain players. I don't know if I'm Doug Armstrong willing to be jumping the gun here to move him. It would have to probably be the right price. But again, if they continue down this path of just kind of struggling in this 1 foot forward, 2 feet back kind of mentality and how their games have gone, maybe it's someone you think about. And look, I think one of the other big reasons why St. Louis is struggling, Jake Neighbors. Jake Neighbors has been hurt for a little bit. He's someone who kind of stirs this drink on this roster here. He's someone that I personally love. He hangs out in front of the net. He gets greasy goals. He's throwing his weight around. Good F1 I want on my team. And he's hurt right now. So I think they're missing that bite and that jump from someone like him in his game. Look, Ty Suter's been a fantastic third line center there. So maybe there's kind of a 2C issue on this roster. But again, I could definitely see a Shen getting moved. I could also see him not getting moved. You're in a very weird spot if you're St. Louis, because it's like you can go all in or you can kind of commit to like a Band-Aid rebuild or some kind of, call it a retool in this case.
If you're St. Louis, I do like the retool aspect of doing it, because I wouldn't trade Jordan Kyrou right now. I know his base stats of goals, assists, points. He only has 11 points in 19 games, which is very low for his standards, especially over the last 5 seasons. But you look at his advanced analytics, and I know general managers and front office and people around the league, they're like, fuck analytics. Is he producing for me on the ice, or is he, not? What do I see from the eye test, right? But from us content creators and media members, the analytics say that he is in the 99th percentile, according to Evolving Hockey, in defense, is 73rd overall percentile, and offense, his goals above replacement is well over 9 in every single facet of the game, especially even strength, which shows me he is an elite 2-way winger in this league. And I think that's very valuable for a St. Louis Blues team that is struggling. And when a team is struggling, a lot of times you'll see their stars kind of be scapegoated of, well, they're not producing. And yeah, Jordan Kyrou is becoming that for the St. Louis Blues. But I understand Robert Thomas has missed some time this season, but he's also not producing either. He has 13 points in 16 games, and for his standards, that's not great. And right now he leads the team in points. And it's not just Kyrou, it's not Thomas, it's not just Snuggerud. It's the entire team as a whole. Now, granted, the goaltending is not helping this team at all, because like you brought up, Binnington, one of the worst statistical goaltenders in the league. His goals saved above expected is the worst in the league among qualified goaltenders at negative 13.67 goals. And then Joel Hofer is third worst in the league at negative 7.01. These are 2 goaltenders that need to start making the saves that they're asked for. And I've talked about this over the last couple of seasons, where a team plays better in the win column and loss column if they can trust their goaltender to make a save. They're willing to go out and maybe try to make that extra play because they can get a save from a goaltender. We saw it with the Senators last season when they got Linus Ullmark. They looked like a much better team, and they ended up making the playoffs because of that. They were able to make plays. They felt more confident in front of Ullmark because they weren't afraid to make mistakes. And if you're in the NHL, you shouldn't be afraid to make mistakes, or else you shouldn't really be in the NHL. But the point being, though, is if this team wants to get back on track, of course, it starts with Thomas, Kyrou, and other guys, but it also starts with Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer being able to make the stage. Jimmy Snuggerud he's been good. He's a rookie. He ended up making his debut in the playoffs over last season, but he's been good for this team. Like you brought up, Jake Neighbors has missed the last 12 games due to injury. He had 6 goals in the first 8 games that he played. He is a huge part on the power play 1, even strength time, and maybe this is a bigger loss than what some people are taking into account. And now if one injury derails your entire season, you have a lot of depth issues. So I would be patient if I was St. Louis. If come Christmas, this is still spiraling down, I would look to make change. And obviously, you don't have a ton of time because they're already 7 points out of a playoff spot. Now, before you know it, it could turn into a 12-point cushion that you're down there with Nashville and Calgary and so on.
Yeah, I want to touch on the point when you brought about analytics in the front office, because it feels like you need a 50-50 in today's world, right? We talk about baseball, and it's over the top of the analytics. It's a lot. Everybody's like, too much math, Just got to go back to playing the fundamentals. You need definitely some numbers in there, but you also need the eye test as well. You need a good mix of the old guys and the new guys coming together to really have a quote unquote happy marriage. That also said, I think one of the names that we haven't talked about the St. Louis Blues is that Pavel Buchnevich here. He's had a really tough go so far this season. He kind of looks out of sorts when you watch him. Just doesn't look like the classic Pavel Buchnevich I know and love. He's only got 7 points this year in 20 games. That's pretty brutal. He's dash 11. I know we don't put a lot of stock into plus minus anymore around the league, but still dash 11 still, that's a little bit of an eye turner there. So he's another guy that we can add to the list of. It's got to kind of pick up your game here, buddy, and keep going. But yeah, you just definitely need a little bit more confidence from your goaltending, and it should come from there. And eventually, once these guys start getting going, like I said, Dvorsky and Snuggerud, the only way is up for these rookies. I mean, Snuggerud's got a great shot. He really highly recommend watching his highlights back at Minnesota. He was fantastic. This kid's going to be good. I'm going to keep pumping up his tires as much as I can because I do love his play. But, St. Louis has got some good pieces here. They just got to start playing a little bit better.
You brought up Buchnevich, where you're paying him $8 million. They just gave him an extension, and now he's on pace for a 40-point season. That is not good enough for a player that you're paying as a top-line guy on the team. He's up there with Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou, who are both making $8.125 million. You need more production out of that. I love that you brought him up. And St. Louis, they're a team that you can kind of retool around. You still have your core pieces in place. And we've talked about the forward group a lot, about how they haven't been able to score at all. They haven't been able to keep the puck out of the net. But their blue line as a whole, it could be better, but it definitely could be worse. But also, they're so old on the back end. Like Colton Parayko, who's making $6.5 million. He has a no trade clause. He's 32. Justin Falk, $6.5 million, 33 years old. You have Cam Fowler, he just signed an extension over the offseason. He's making 6.1 after this season at the ripe age of 34. He'll be 34 next season. He's 33 at the moment. I mean, you also have some young guys like Matthew Kessel and Tyler Tucker, who the Blues are very ecstatic about. And, of course, Philip Broberg, who you ended up getting from Edmonton in the whole, off-sheet fiasco last offseason. He's been a solid piece, and he's a young core piece. But the one thing that kind of made sense for the Blues in the offseason was exploring Jordan Kyrou for a younger defenseman, for a Bowen Byram, for even a Jordan Spence over there in LA, who ended up getting shipped off to Ottawa right around the draft. And now you're stuck with some older guys who defensively, they're not great. Offensively, Colton Parayko had a very good offensive season last season. We all know Cam Fowler ended up going off in the Winnipeg series. So he's shown that he can still put up some offensive numbers, but defensively wise, they're just not great. Justin Falk looks very slow. I wonder if next season he could be a trade candidate, or maybe even if the Blues are willing to retain 50%. Trading him at $3.25 million this season, because he has this season and next season left on his contract. So there's a lot of moving parts here, kind of all over the place. And in order for this team to really become a playoff team again, they just need everybody to step up their game. We kind of touched on who needs to touch up their game and who needs to play better. And before anything else happens, the on-ice product needs to be better.
Foot speed. You talk about all the defensemen. What's the one thing that kind of goes? It's closeout speed and it's foot speed in the corners. It's, how many times have you gone through and done ladders as a kid and you're like, what is this still? Like, oh no, it's actually really good for you, especially as you get older. And, this blue line's a little ancient. Like, let's be honest here. Look, I like Tucker. I like Kessel, I like Broberg. Big shout out to Falk for getting those 1,000 games. He's been around the league forever. Really cool to see with him. But, that also said, we talk about closeout speed, and boxing guys out. You need to be on and off those walls pretty quickly in your defensive zone. Goaltenders are only as good as your blue line in front of you. I mean, perfect example, right? The Hurricanes are really missing Jacob Slavin right now. They're letting a lot leak in through their zone. And Freddie and Kochkov are kind of struggling with some of these shots here. You bring Slavin back into the picture, and I'm sure your goaltending will be a lot better for the most part. If you can clear out 2 and 3, that'd be great. So the big thing right now is, for me, it's foot speed. Something I want to keep watching. Look, I like I don't mind the Cam Fowler extension. I thought he was really good down the stretch there ever since he got to St. Louis. He's someone I'm willing to bet on. Just kind of be the rock in there. And just with the rest of the blue line, there are some possible trade candidates as well, I would agree, if this continues to go south. But I'm going to stay positive here on the Blues. So I think, it just needs a little spark. You just need a couple wins in a row, and I think this team really gets rolling. We've seen how streaky the Blues can be over the years.
They have a prime opportunity to do that, to string together some wins. You play Philadelphia, who I think the Blues on paper are a better team. You play them on the 20th there. 22nd, you play a Islanders team that's playing with house money. They have that rookie, Matthew Schaefer, but they've been kind of surprisingly good. They're a very fun team. And then you play a Rangers team in New York, where, of course, we mentioned earlier in the episode, they have one win at home currently as of this recording. So you have a chance right now to string together 3 straight wins. And if you string together 3 straight wins here, you go to New Jersey and then you go to Ottawa. Sorry, you're home against Ottawa and Utah. You can end off this month really winning 4 out of your last 6 games. And you're in good shape there. You can build some momentum off of that. Then you can start to dig yourself out of the hole, especially in the Western Conference, where I think Chicago, they're overperforming. I think the Kraken are going to start falling dramatically. Minnesota and Edmonton are kind of struggling over the last 10 games or so. Minnesota's gotten a little bit hot here, but they're kind of a team that relies a lot on Kirill Kaprizov. San Jose, they would keep falling, etc. So you win the 4 games out of the next 6, and all of a sudden you're back into things. So
there's a window. There's a window there.
Yeah, there is. There is a window, but they have to take the opportunity and run with it. They can't afford to go 2-4 in that span, for example. Going over to the Eastern Conference, because we've been a lot in the Western Conference, the Toronto Maple Leafs with their Thursday therapy segment. Before their win last night, they ended up losing 5 straight games. And I don't want to sit here and panic for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but a team that lost Mitch Marner, that tried to address it by addressing a ton of depth, bringing in Matthias Micheli, bringing in Nicholas Waugh, bringing in other guys. You brought in Lofton at the deadline last season. And now you sit here with 20 points in 20 games, sitting at 500, and sitting in second to last place in the Eastern Conference. And not to mention, Austin Matthews has not skated. Sorry, he skated yesterday, but before that, it was since November 11th was the last time he skated due to his injury. Let me ask you this. If you're the Maple Leafs, are you panicking right now, or are you waiting to get healthy? Because I know Matthew Knies, he is also dealing with some sort of injury. You have Brandon Carlo. Tanev obviously taking that scary hit. Glad that he was okay. So, and Anthony Solars as well is hurt. So a lot of this losing could also have to do with their injuries that they're dealing with, as well as some of key guys.
I am the big man of patience in this episode here. Talk about patience with the Blues, and we're going to talk about patience with the Leafs here. Now, look, do I kind of think the Leafs are a top 3 team in their division? I'm not sure I believe that anymore. I think they're more of a wild card team at this point. But when you have a Knies that's hurt, a Matthews that's hurt, a Stolars that's hurt, like you mentioned, the Tanev hit, Lawton's out, Waugh's out. I mean, I can keep going here. Brandon Carlo's hurt. I mean, when you look at their blue line, they're grabbing Troy Stecher off waivers here. And this is a big testament to their depth and how they're coached. I mean, Craig Berube is really barking at these guys in practice and, getting a lot out of them. And, the whole play in overtime, that's all John Tavares. Granted, Willie does the absolutely beautiful and just disgusting move. But, that whole thing doesn't happen without John Tavares digging on the wall and winning that board battle. Winning that, I believe he had 2 Blues players on him there, too. So if he doesn't win that battle, Willie's not doing William Nylander thing. So, look, when you talk about this roster, there are serious areas that I need to improve, especially your depth. Look, I liked the addition of Micheli. I liked the addition of Dakota Joshua. But when you watched him in the playoffs last year, it felt like when you don't have your big guys going, like, where else is the production going to come from? Like, it just feels like there's a bunch of dudes out there. It's like, we'll chip and chase. We'll get on the forecheck. We'll wear these guys out. But where are the goals going to come from? You look at their bottom 6 as of right now, and I know they're pretty banged up. Micheli's a great pass. Some of the passes he's made to Matthews this year are unbelievable. I really like that move. When you talk about Sammy Blais, he was in the minors last year. I thought he was okay in the minors, but how much goal production, how much point production can you really expect from him? Same thing with Dakota Joshua. He's a couple of years removed, I believe, from his, I think he had 20 goals in Vancouver. Now, Steven Lorenz, Callie Yarncrook, these are guys that are good role-playing guys on one of my fourth line, but when we talk about production, I don't know. Like Max Domi, I always felt like I wanted a little bit more out of his production, but he's been a solid two-way guy, role player. You know, it just feels like that this roster has a lot of the same type of player, and they just need to be refined a little bit more. It just felt like Ottawa last year in the playoffs had their way with them in the neutral zone, especially just on zone entry. So I think there's something to that. I like that fact that Robo is getting some longer leash here and he's getting some looks. I think Easton Callum has a bright future. But again, you know, and then switching to the blue line, right? Like Jake McCabe is one hit away from being out for the year. I mean, the guy is made of glass. As much as I like his physicality on the blue line, he is one bad hit away from a decent injury. I mean, when you talk about OEL, he's a little older on that. Simon Benoit is solid, and then you have two fillers on your bottom six. So you're leaning a lot on these guys right now. I think, again, patience, because a lot of guys are hurt. Tanev and Carlo make a huge difference on this blue line. And also the fact that Joseph Wall's back now. This is a huge addition for them. They don't, you know, Stolarz can, I guess, take his time with coming back, considering Joseph Wall's going to get a lot of leash here. I know he missed camp for personal reasons, and I hope everything went well there. But again, another guy that I liked his game. I thought he was strong against the Blues. Like William Nylander put the puck into his own net on a really wacky bounce. And I can't blame that on Joseph Wall there. It's just bad bounce, unfortunate timing. So Willie had the first goal and the last goal. Turns out one of them was just his own goal. But if you're a Leafs fan, I think it's just patience right now and just kind of wait to get healthy. They should be in the playoffs, but I have them more of a wild card team right now.
They're in an intriguing spot because the Eastern Conference, like we talked about when I came on to your podcast, it's just so deep. It's such a cluster right now. They sit second to last in the Eastern Conference, but one win puts them in a wild card spot. They're tied for that matter. So patience, you have to preach patience with the Maple Leafs, like you brought up. Injury after injury after injury. They've just gotten killed with the injury bug. Everybody is talking about Montreal and Boston being hit with the Toronto, though, and Florida are the two teams that are elite teams with healthy, but already getting killed with the injury bug. Obviously, we know with Florida, we have Barkov and Kachuk out, and then Toronto, we just touched on their injuries. Getting Woll back, like you brought up, was huge, but it takes goalies time to get in the swing of things, especially when you miss an entire training camp and preseason and the start of the season. We've seen goaltenders miss all of that, come back and not be good the entire season, and then come back the following season when they're back to prepping like their regular offseason and preseason, and then they're back on their game again, and they're back to being a really good goaltender. The Leafs, they're okay. No panic button. You don't need to panic trade somebody or panic send somebody down or go out and overpay to trade for help. Defensively, sure. I think the Maple Leafs could be better defensively, not just on the blue line, but their forwards as well, helping out defensively, helping out the goaltenders. I don't think scoring is the issue. I think it's being able to keep the puck out of the net, being able to not have so many defensive breakdowns and relapses, and being able to help each other out, move up the ice as a five-man unit. They're doing all the little things just a step too slow, in my opinion. They're doing not winning the corners and the battles as the battles in the corners as much. They're not being able to clear out the front of the net as much as they were when they were healthy. And of course, losing so many of your top guys, it does take a hit on the locker room's morale a little bit. It's these bringing in a fourth line guy and now is playing 14 minutes a night on the third line or even possibly second line, depending on what injuries look like and how the game's going. And Berube's in a tough spot here coaching-wise, and I think that Tree Living has done a great job in just being patient, understanding that, hey, we're just unlucky right now with injuries. The Eastern Conference is going to be like this the entire season. We're 2 points out of it. We can sit back, and obviously you want to win hockey games. You're not, especially in the Toronto media, you're not going to sit here and accept that, hey, we're just losing. You don't want to do that. But at the end of the day, though, sometimes, like you brought up 1,000 times here in this episode, patient with Toronto, and I still think they can sneak into the third spot in the Atlantic Division, especially because even though Boston, they just lost McAvoy for an extended period of time, hopefully he has a speedy recovery. I think Boston and Detroit are due for some type of regression, and I think Montreal could be due for some type of regression as well. As I think that their win pace is kind of, I mean, they have like 4 or 5 wins in overtime alone, which is half of their win total, which isn't sustainable. So is there a way where Toronto, once they get healthy, can go on a little bit of a run and get Matthews and Nylander and Tavares and Nye going? Absolutely. I think there is a way. So I don't think that they're missing the playoffs for sure. People that are saying, oh, the Maple Leafs are going to miss the playoffs, that should only be said in like a fucking hot take segment. Like an Instagram account says, give me your hot takes. It's like Toronto Maple Leafs will miss the playoffs like that. If somebody says that and they truly believe it, I don't agree with it. But nevertheless, though, the Toronto Maple Leafs, they're okay. They'll be top 3 in the Atlantic, in my humble opinion, and I'll just leave it at that.
I think the biggest thing, at least over the last 2 weeks, to take away from the Leafs, Bradshaw Living's quote of saying, we're just kind of vanilla right now. It's true. They're just kind of there. They're just kind of hanging out. They've got like I said, they just kind of got a lot of dudes just hanging out and playing hockey. It just doesn't feel like they have that oomph and that jump that you know and love from watching hockey. And look, I fully think with Berube getting on them in practice a little bit, it'll change. But it's a big win for them last night. I cannot understate how big of a win in overtime that was. And for William Nylander to put the team on his back, I mean, that probably is the goal of the year.
That goal was disgusting. I don't know. Obviously, we all know Nylander has it in him. He's now the offensive leader with Austin Matthews, although Tavares having a really good season, same with Nyes. But the way that he just worked the boards, the way that he just was able to pull that to your stick, and then on top of it, have it being overtime game-winning goal, and like you brought up earlier, have the confidence to be able to pull that move off in a game, in a 3-on-3 setting where your margin for error 3-on-3 is even smaller, because if you blow an edge or you turn the puck over, going back the other way, it's a 2-on-1, etc. In this case, it would have been a 2-on-2 or 3-on-2, but still the case. So the confidence he has is through the roof, and that was right now one of the goals of the year.
Yeah, and like I said, patience, patience, patience. That's the biggest thing I can say to Leaf fans right now is just get healthy and make your run towards the end of the year. I have a full expectant of Bradshaw Living buying at the deadline and trying to add guys. And I know there's a lot of rumors about how they miss Marner right now, and I think you'll get through it. I think the biggest thing right now is to just not talk about it. Don't ask the players about it. Don't talk about it on the media. Move on. Like, don't talk about your ex like that. Just keep driving forward. That's the biggest thing I can say if you're a Toronto fan, because, I mean, who wants to keep dwelling on the past, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's in the past. He's in Vegas now. He's playing well. And I saw somebody bring up this point that Marner was a scapegoat, as we all know, in Toronto for the playoff struggles and everything. But players like Marner at least get you to the playoffs. And this team is still a playoff team without him. But now blame's going to be passed around to William Nylander, to Austin Matthews, if it already hasn't been, to even John Tavares, Morgan Riley, now that Marner's not there. And the Toronto media is tough, but a lot of medias are tough like this too. Montreal is the biggest hockey market in the league, in my opinion, and their media is tough. Although they don't send death threats to their players or whatever. That's a topic for a different story. But the New York Rangers media is very tough on them. They were grilling them for their 5-1 start at home or something like that, which included an overtime loss to the San Jose Sharks earlier this season. So don't talk about Mitch Marner. If a Toronto media member brings up, so do you guys think this is struggling because you don't have Mitch Marner? I would slap him in the face like that. That would be not great.
I mean, when Mitch Marner eventually comes back to Toronto here, it's going to be must-watch TV. The media scrum, everything, practice, warm-ups, you name it. It's going to be interesting. So, look, like I said, with the Leafs, I think Woll, Stolar is a really good tandem. Your blue line gets beefed up a little bit better. Chris Tanev is one of the best closeout guys in the league. He's one of the better guys with a stick. And then you just got the biggest crux that I have with this Leafs team is that depth at forward. Like, where are the depth goals going to come from? Like, if There's no JT, no Nylander, no Matthews. Who's scoring for this team? I can't put my finger on it. So Treliving is, again, another GM that's probably going to want to add some scoring here. Maybe bring back the Bunting and have him hang out in front of net. I know he's not necessarily a big scorer there, but hey, I mean, if you can bring in a little bit more physicality, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it's going to be intriguing to see what they do right around the Olympics. I'm sure Toronto will still be in it then, and kind of evaluate the roster. Like you said, do you go out and get a Michael Bunting? Do you go out and get a rental to kind of help improve the depth, at least for the time being, until you can figure out what to do via free agency or trades in the offseason come July 1st, etc. So if you're Treliving, I think you're in a much better spot than obviously St. Louis with Armstrong or Barry Trotz in Nashville, like we talked about in this episode. But time's ticking too, because if Toronto keeps dealing with injuries, his hand might be forced to have to go out and make a move before they fall too out of it. So I'm not worried. Obviously, you're not worried about the Maple Leafs either. If you're a Maple Leafs fan watching and listening, please don't be worried about their 5-game losing streak. Be encouraged by their overtime win against the St. Louis Blues, even though they're a struggling St. Louis Blues team. And just be happy that Austin Matthews is skating again. He should be back within the next couple of days to a week. That's going to end it for today's episode. And Brian, thank you again for joining me on today's episode. Let the audience know where they can find you, social media platforms, stuff like that.
Yeah, I appreciate the invite. I'd love to do this again at some point soon here in the future. Yeah, you can find me at the Hockey 411 on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, posting every day clips of our show. Love to get more breakdowns in when I can, giving commentary on games and stuff like that. Don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Love talking to the fans, loving hearing back, and every day it just feels like we're taking big steps on the show.
Yeah, thank you again for being here. And for the viewers and listeners, we release new episodes every single Sunday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern. Subscribe, notification bell. Check us out on all of our socials down in the description below. And we'll see you guys in our next episode.